Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday. Fired up. You are here with us. Hope your work week is done. Hope you didn't even have any work. But if you're still working, we'll get you to the finish line. Got a holiday coming up tomorrow, so everybody's just about ready. Punch that time clock. We'll do it in 2 hours. I basically had this entire show set up like 10 minutes after yesterday's show. And then J.D. Piquel texted me and said, we got to move to there. And then Matthew Bruni texted me. He's like, we need to move there. And so we kind of shuffled everything around. But we got a lot to get to over the course of 2 hours here, and we'll do it all. My SEC football power rankings entering rivalry weekend coming up in 15 minutes. We got to talk about the Saints. They get ready for the Rams. J.D. is going to join us at the end of this hour at about 1:45. Matthew Bruni is going to be with us probably 2:30-ish after the women's basketball game is over down at the Bahamas. They got off to a little bit of a clunky start down there, so we'll talk to Bruni about that. Plus, we just got word from Matt McMahon that Damian Collins dislocated his shoulder for the second year in a row. So we will see what that means for LSU basketball moving forward, and we'll talk to Bruni about it in the second hour. We've got to pick all the SEC games against the spread because I've got to have a huge week. No question about that. We got picks for the Saints and LSU coming up. So we've got basically 3 shows to boil down into one. We'll get it taken care of, and we appreciate you hanging out with us here at 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali, and we're ready to rock. We'll start the same way that we start each and every show with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, let's talk LSU and Oklahoma. I found a stat today that absolutely knocked my socks off. And full disclosure, we in the media, whether it's print, broadcast, radio, television, whatever, we lean on sports information departments to come up with a lot of good nuggets, and they do that. Michael Bonnet and his team over at LSU are fantastic. I don't know who the SID is at Oklahoma, and I don't know how obvious this stat was in watching the games, but man, is it impressive to look at when they put it in print earlier this week. Oklahoma has lost 6 games this year. In those 6 losses, they have been outscored on the turnover margin 58-7. 6 losses, 58-7 on turnovers. And you go, so that's pretty sizable. You're going to lose a lot of games. You turn the ball over like that, and you give up a lot of points on those turnovers. That makes a lot of sense. But it's compounded. In Oklahoma's 5 wins this year, they've won points off turnover 77-8. That is a massive swing. We know that turnovers are oftentimes the biggest determination in who wins an evenly matched football game. Yes, LSU can turn the ball over 3 times in a game against Nichols, and they're still going to win the game. But you play a conference game, no matter what level, and you lose the turnover battle, you're probably going to lose. This isn't losing and winning the turnover battle. This is absolutely getting eviscerated or pummeling an opponent on turnovers. Again, those numbers. In their 6 losses, they've been outscored 58-7 via turnovers. In their 5 wins, they have outscored opponents 77-8. Jalen Milroe, 3 interceptions back on Saturday. Oklahoma wins that game 24-3. We know that turnovers have been a bugaboo for Garrett Nussmeier this year. He did not turn the ball over in the game against Vanderbilt, and LSU was incredibly efficient. Their defense held up when they were given the entire field to do so in, and LSU won the game. I feel like they won it comfortably. That's probably a lot to save a 7-point game, but I felt like they won it comfortably. But we know that you turn the football over, avalanches can happen like they did in College Station. And you don't want to coach aggressiveness out of a player. You don't want to cut the legs out from under Garrett Nussmeier by telling him to eat the football. But when you look at Oklahoma and you look at what they've been on offense this year, and we went through all those numbers yesterday on the show, 15th out of 16 teams in scoring offense. 16th in total offense, that's dead last. 16th in yards per carry, that's dead last. 16th in passing offense, that's dead last. 16th in sacks allowed, that's dead last. You start to roll these things up. Their offense cannot consistently go 75, 80, 85 yards if you're kicking off and punting and handling your business in the field position. But their offense can go a short distance. Their defense can create points. And they've done that this year, and they did that last year. Billy Bowman Jr., their safety, has got 4 touchdowns in his career on defense. He's got 11 interceptions. I hate to boil a game down into one stat, and I'm not going to boil this game down into one statistic because it's not one statistic. There are a number of factors that are going to bear out. But it stands to reason. If Garrett Nussmeier does not turn the ball over via the interception or in like Alabama when he fumbled the ball, that Oklahoma's going to have a hard time scoring enough points. Their defense is good. We went over that yesterday too. And I think they'll get some stops against LSU. I think they'll give LSU a difficult time on the ground. But man, that turnover number is just massive. And it makes all the sense in the world. So this week, I do think Joe Sloan and Brian Kelly need to sit with Garrett Nussmeier and go, look, man, there are probably some games where LSU has to try to make a play. Like last year, like Jaden Daniels can't give up on a play against Ole Miss or Missouri last year. Like you've got to go make a play because your defense is going to give up a lot of points and you've got to keep up. That is not the case on Saturday. Taking a sack on third down, that's fine. I know you got to punt. That's okay. I heard Joe Burrow say that in a Barstool interview back in the summer. And they were talking about how often he gets sacked. And he says, yeah, we got to look into context of when those sacks happen. Third down sack, who cares? We're punting anyway. You take a sack on first down, and it's 1st and 18 as opposed to throwing it away for 2nd and 10, or 2nd and 18 instead of 2nd and 10. Well, that really hurts the team. Third down sacks, what's the difference? And that's kind of the mindset that Garrett Nussmeier needs to take into this game. No, I'm not telling you don't stretch the field. The exact opposite, actually. You need to stretch the field. I'm not telling you that we're just going to play conservative and try to win this thing 14-10. But you do have to realize what's on the other side of you. And I know that Oklahoma ran for 250 last week, and they scored 24 points on Alabama, and they're changing the offense with the new offensive coordinator. But let's be real honest. If Oklahoma comes in here and scores 35 points on Saturday, I'll be stunned. Because they haven't shown they can do that against anybody. So that number that I saw today, I just looked at it and I went, we know turnovers are important. When you look at how reliant Oklahoma has been on them in their wins, you realize what you're looking at. That's the number one matchup I see in this game. The second is what we talked about yesterday, Jackson Arnold's legs trying to run against LSU's front seven. Lenora Sellers, Jalen Milroe, Marcel Reed diced LSU up big way. Diego Pavia and Taylon Green did not. I can't tell you specifically why that happened in each of those specific games. I just know that it did. So that's matchup number 2 that you've got to look at. And then number 3, I think, for LSU and Oklahoma in this game is Oklahoma's linebacker and their linebacking core, but specifically Danny Stutzman, who is one of the best linebackers that Oklahoma has ever had. He is going to finish in the top 5 in Oklahoma history in tackles for loss. He ranks 4th in the SEC in tackles this season with 100, and they're really good against the run. They're 6th in the country in yards per carry allowed at just 2.9, and if you go to just the last 5 games, they're allowing 2.6. Ole Miss, who isn't great running the ball, but has been pretty good over the last couple of years with Lane Kiffin, their longest run in Oklahoma was 9 yards. Jalen Milroe only gained 29 yards on 15 carries against these guys. We know how much easier things get for LSU when they do run the ball. They did run it against South Carolina. They scored a lot of points on a good defense that day. They did run the ball last week against Vanderbilt, and they controlled the game. They controlled the clock. They did not run. They ran the ball against Arkansas. They controlled that game. They did not run it against Alabama. They did not run it in the second half against A&M. And we know what that means. So that's the other matchup here that is vital in this game. So it's the turnovers, Nussmeier against an opportunity defense. It's LSU's ability to corral the running game and LSU's ability to block Oklahoma specifically at the second level and create some things on the ground. Those are the three issues that I look at in this game and say LSU needs to control those. If they do, I don't think Oklahoma can come into Tiger Stadium and win. If they don't, I think it's going to be a long day for LSU because that's exactly the formula that Oklahoma wants to use to win games, and they were able to do it last week. They got the 3 interceptions. They ran the ball, especially with their quarterback, and they stopped the run. That's the recipe. And I realize that you can apply that to a lot of games, but Oklahoma doesn't have a lot of versatility on the team. That's why they're a 5-6 football team. Those are the matchups to look at. That's our opening drive presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge. We're going to be off tomorrow. We're going to be off on Friday. So we're going to kind of jam everything we can into the next hour and 50 minutes or so. I've got my picks for this game coming up. I've got some Saints and Rams to discuss a little bit later. But when we come back, it is Wednesday. I want to get to our SEC football power rankings. We got one more of those to get to next week. And then we'll look back and see how this shook out after 1 week. I have those initial power rankings. There were some movement. We had Ole Miss number 1 the last couple of weeks. I don't think they'll remain there. We'll do some SEC football power rankings coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Invite you to make LeBear's Baton Rouge your game day headquarters all winter long. They got the biggest screens around, and now you can bet and dine at ESPN Bet in person. I tell you about ESPN Bet every single day. It's a great place to go watch a lot of games. There's some great football. It's going to be on all weekend. I highly suggest you go by ESPN Bet and watch as much of it as you possibly can. They make it easy for you. They've got great group seating table available, and they've got just a seat for you if you want it right there in front of the huge screen. They take that screen and they put multiple games on it. It's an awesome place to sit down and watch it all and wager on all of it as well. Plus, one more chance to download the Cover 5 app and compete against me. I am very much like middle of the pack at this point for the season. Got one more week to stand up strong. If you download the Cover 5 app and enter the code LABRSEC24, you can pick 5 games against the spread and have a chance to win prizes. If you're not a member, get that Penn Play app today. LeBear's Baton Rouge is your live sports headquarters. Got to be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-589-9966 for help.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show with former Texas A&M Yell leader, Hunt Palmer. Giga Maggies.
I gotta tell you, Beck, this is one of those weeks where if you gave me a ticket to go watch A&M and Texas, I would take you up on it.
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be the best environment in college football this season.
Probably.
When you think of that many years without playing, what's on the line for those two teams? Hatred, Thanksgiving weekend. That's gonna be incredible. I'll just give you a little bit of a teaser on the SEC picks against the spread, which will be in hour number 2. I'm not sure I understand that point spread at 5.5.
Yeah.
Texas being favored there. Texas's best win is Vanderbilt, and they're going to go in front of 105,000 people that are going nuts, and they're going to handle their business. I don't know, man. I think that line's wrong. I think if I had to make that number, I would put A&M as a 2-point pick. That's a touchdown difference to me. But we'll see. We'll get to those picks in hour number 2. All right, we've been doing SEC football power rankings on Wednesday each and every week, and I feel like they've gotten fairly locked in. Let's see, what's the biggest move? There were a couple of 2-spot movers this week. In fact, there were 3 of them, but not a ton of movement. So I guess it's time to get to them. SEC football power rankings.
Hunt's SEC power rankings. The Georgia Bulldogs.
I gave Georgia the top spot again this week. Ole Miss was in it for 2 weeks after mauling Georgia, but I just can't in good conscience put Ole Miss at the top when you've lost to Kentucky and Florida. It just doesn't check out. They did annihilate Georgia, and I give them a lot of credit for that, but I think the Dogs probably deserve that top spot at this point. Carson Beck has not turned the ball over a ton lately. Has only thrown didn't throw an interception last week, which helps. So I got Georgia at number 1. Number 2.
The Ole Miss Rebels.
Just ding the Rebels 1 spot here. I think that's reasonable. I think the resume is is fairly strong, although they did lose in Tiger Stadium and lose in the Swamp. But I think their defense is really good. And if Lane Kiffin would just trust his defense and kick a field goal every once in a while, I think things could be a little bit different, but he doesn't, so they're not. Ole Miss, one of the best wins of the season, dominating Georgia. I've got them at number 2.
The Texas Longhorns.
Okay, I guess we'll finally learn something about Texas this week. I think we learned a little bit in the Georgia game, but Georgia's really good. If Texas loses this game, I think they're going to take a huge tumble in next week's power rankings. But, I think they've got a good defense. Their quarterback has played in big moments and been pretty good. So there is reason to believe in Texas, but it's not concrete. It's just kind of abstract. So we'll see what they can do in Kyle Field. I've got them at number 3 this week.
The Tennessee Volunteers.
Got the Vols at 4. Probably should have put them at 3, but I've got them at number 4 right here. Again, didn't necessarily play poorly at Georgia, and I think they'll handle their business against Vanderbilt. They'll be in the playoff. Are they a threat to win it? I don't know. That offense needs to play better than it has, but I've got Tennessee as the 4th best team in the league.
The South Carolina Gamecocks.
Gamecocks up to number 5, and they are a playoff threat at this point. South Carolina can make it. If they can beat Clemson, they've got a chance. And I think they've got a good chance to beat Clemson, quite frankly. They've found an identity. Norris Sellers is playing way better. He's avoiding sacks. He's not turning the ball over. They run it really well. And that defensive front is as good as any in college football. That's just the way it is. So they move up 1 spot into the top 5 in the league, the South Carolina Gamecocks.
The Alabama Crimson Tide.
Tide tumbles down to number 6. On their good day, they're really good. On their good day, they embarrassed Georgia for a half and beat them. They came into Tiger Stadium and made LSU look like a JV team. On their good day, they're good. On their bad day, yeesh. That was a bad day in Norman, Oklahoma. Jalen Milroe didn't look like a college quarterback. He looked like the most athletic high school kid on his team that doesn't know how to throw. That's bizarre, but it is what it is. They're just not consistent, and I don't think they'll be in the playoff in year 1 under Kalen DeBoer, and that makes me happy. Texas A&M! Aggies at number 7. I think some people can make the case they could be better. I don't fully trust Marcel Reed. I don't fully trust him to pilot that team to do really good things on offense. As long as they can keep it on the ground, they're functional. I think that defense is legit, and I do think Elko is a great defensive coach, but they do have some flaws, especially in the passing game and with the weapons on the outside. So I'll take A&M at number 7.
The Florida Gators.
SEC Billy. SEC Billy.
He's shed the Sunbelt name.
Shed the Sunbelt name. That's a couple of nice wins there. The folks in Gainesville love him. They're chanting his name as he comes off the field. He gets another year. He's got his quarterback, and they're in the top half of the SEC at this point. I've got Florida up a spot to number 8.
The LSU Tigers.
LSU does move up 1 spot after beating Vanderbilt. They jump the doors to the number 9 spot. I think on their best day, LSU's tough to handle because the quarterback can make a lot of plays. But on their worst day, that defense is bad, and the quarterback does it to the wrong team, and that happened too often this year, and that's why LSU is not in the top half at this point. I got the Tigers at number 9.
The Vanderbilt Commodores.
Vandy tumbles a couple of spots there. They only lost by 7. But with my eyes, I'm watching it not feeling like they were a threat. I think that's kind of the point with Vanderbilt all year is that they do look pretty good at points, and they rarely look great. And they're not great. They're okay, and that's why they're 10th.
The Missouri Tigers.
Missouri stands pat. They're playing better on offense. No question about that. Brady Cook has gotten a little healthier. They're scoring a lot of points. They scored in the game against Oklahoma. They scored some points against South Carolina. I think they'll score some points against Arkansas this week. Luther Burden's career coming to an end there. Just a disappointing year, I think, overall for Missouri, but not one of the bottom 5 in the league.
The Auburn Tigers.
Auburn moves up 1 spot to number 12. I believe Auburn may have occupied the doormat at one point in these rankings because they couldn't win a league game, but they gotten on track a little bit. Peyton Thorne has only thrown 1 interception since the 1st of October. That's a huge improvement from what they were doing early in the season. They were throwing it to the other team half their drives. Hugh Freeze has got a pretty good offense. They just don't quite have the talent level yet to compete at the top of the league. We'll see if they get there with this signing class. It looks pretty good. Cam Carter, freshman receiver, very good. Auburn at number 12.
The Arkansas Razorbacks.
Hogs at 13. They tumble a spot. They're not playing great against the elite teams in the SEC. Didn't hang with Texas too much. Got killed by Ole Miss. Crushed by LSU as well. Not a great team, but I think a team that is okay and will have a chance to go to Missouri and win. But they're towards the bottom here at 13.
The Oklahoma Sooners.
I realize they beat Alabama, but those 3 turnovers are not going to happen every single week. And I feel like that offense is just anemic. So I like the defense. It is strong. The offense is so bad. I can't move them off the 14 spot here.
The Kentucky Wildcats.
Kentucky is really bad. They've lost 5 of 6. One win was against the team outside of the FBS in Murray State. They're just they're not good on offense. They've made a quarterback change. They're not great on defense. I cannot explain the Ole Miss result. I just can't do it. I've got Ole Miss at 2 and Kentucky at 15, and they went on the road and beat them in a league where everybody's winning at home. But that's been the only real shining moment for Kentucky. It's hoop season on the Bluegrass.
The Mississippi State Bulldogs.
They got to go recruit. It's almost recruiting time, signing day time for Mississippi State. That defense is the worst in the league by a long shot, and maybe they caught a break last week when Ole Miss lost, and they may not get the Rebs' best effort in the Egg Bowl, but I got Mississippi State at 16. That's not a very good team. So Georgia 1, Ole Miss 2, Texas at 3, Tennessee's at 4, South Carolina moves into the 5th spot, Alabama back 2 spots to number 6, A&M at 7, Florida in the top half there at 8, LSU's 9th, Vandy dips to 10th, Missouri at 11, Auburn's at 12, Arkansas at 13, number 14 is Oklahoma, 15 Kentucky, 16 Mississippi State. Beck, what are your thoughts on those power rankings?
I'm trying to remember where Oklahoma was last week. Were they 14?
Oklahoma was 14. The bottom 3 did not change. Oklahoma, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Do I need to move Oklahoma when they beat Alabama?
Yeah, I think so. I understand, like, they have been really bad the whole season.
And Arkansas and Auburn are right in front of them, and Oklahoma's defense is better than any unit Auburn or Arkansas has. But their offense gives me the night sweats.
Yeah, I get it. I would probably have them
above Arkansas.
I'd probably have them above Arkansas at least.
Here, full disclosure, and I realize that the most recent week is a new data point, so it should have a big impact. But I try not to be reactionary week to week and then just look at the whole body of work. So if I'm doing that, I'm going to look at Arkansas beating Tennessee as a really strong performance as well. And Arkansas went to Mississippi State and scored like 60-something. So that was good too. I'm not. You may have a point there. I'm not married to Oklahoma being worse than Arkansas, and I'm going to pick LSU and Oklahoma. And I do think Oklahoma's got a chance to come to Tiger Stadium and win.
Yes,
because the matchup is not great for LSU. I think that when LSU's run game's gotten neutered, things have gotten a little hairy. And Oklahoma wants to run the ball, so I think there's reason that they could come in here and win. But that offense just.
Yeah, it's been bad. It's probably the worst. I mean, them and Kentucky are in contention. Suppose who has the worst offense?
They both shuffled quarterbacks, and both had. Hey, how about that? Both had 5-star quarterbacks piloting their offense.
Yeah,
I hope that happens
crazy.
to Michigan for the next couple of years. Is that sour grapes?
Wow.
Yes, it is.
It is.
We'll come back, talk a little bit about the Saints and the Rams coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Love telling you about One Bath and Closets. David Duvall and his team are fantastic. You can check them out at onebathandclosets.com. David's been at this for over 30 years, redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. If you're thinking about what to get a loved one in your life under your roof for Christmas, how about a brand new bathroom? How about a brand new closet? Closet can be a big deal. I didn't realize how big a deal a closet could be until my wife moved into my house and she hated our closets. It was not great. And we had jackets and shirts and different rooms and suitcases shoved up in the attic. We just didn't have enough space. So when we moved, we decided to go ahead and prioritize closet space. And it's made all the difference. You don't have to move to prioritize closet space. You can just call David Duvall and his team at One Bath and Closets. They do fantastic work. They're going to be able to finance it if you'd like, 18 months, 0% if you qualify for it. And the consultation's free. That doesn't cost anything. So have David Duvall and his team come over, tell you what they can do for you and what price they can do it. It's David Duvall and One Bath and Closets. Check him out online, onebathandclosets.com, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
This is one of the busiest travel days of the year, they tell me. A lot of people taking a long weekend, hitting the road, surrounded by family. So if you are traveling, hope you're doing so safely, and we appreciate you for making us part of your travels. I'll be doing some of that traveling coming up here in about 2.5 hours, I would suggest. Got to get the wife to punch that time clock, and then we are headed north. Shift the kiddo up yesterday, so it was a nice morning in the Palmer house without a kid yelling or screaming that he wanted a waffle or trying to put on Peppa Pig on the TV. It was nice. I could watch some sports and get some work done without the little guy around. But I'll be excited to see him later. JD Piquel, speaking of kids, just had one last week. Will join us here in about 12 minutes to talk some national college football. The updated college football playoff rankings were released last night, so we'll get JD's thoughts on all of that as well as a thumbnail on LSU and Oklahoma. Time now to talk a little Saints. The Saints will welcome the Rams in on Sunday. It's a rare 3:05 kick inside the Dome. I always appreciate the 3:05 kick when I was going to games because I do like to have a couple cold beers at the game, and I just always found it a little bit awkward going to the game and having a couple of pops and then walking out at 3 o'clock. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do now?
I cannot believe.
Got a bit of a buzz. Like, am I supposed to go out? Do I just go and take a nap? Like, what's the rest of the afternoon hold?
I cannot believe you're saying this right now because you're also the same guy that I talked to yesterday, saying that even though you're going to be playing golf at 8 o'clock in the morning,
that's
that you're still going to be drinking.
I don't have work the next day.
Okay.
It's a weekend. It's a holiday.
It's Sunday.
Sunday's I got to go to work tomorrow. So but if it's a 3:05 game, you just roll out of there 6:15. You go have a glass of wine or something at dinner, and then you call it an early night. It's just a more efficient use of the Sunday fun day.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. Well, either way, they're going to play at 3:05, and it'll be the Saints and the Rams. The Rams on paper, offensively, look incredible. You've got Matthew Stafford, who I guess is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think that's probably fair to say. He's got his Super Bowl now, and he's going to hold a ton of records because he's been in the league so long in a past happy era. I would suggest he's going to go into the Hall of Fame. You have Cooper Kupp, who was the best receiver in the league a couple of years ago. You've got Puka Nacua, who set the world on fire last year. Kyron Williams has been great at running back for him. The skill positions for the Rams look really, really good, but they just haven't been consistent. One, they haven't been healthy start to finish, but nobody really is in the NFL. And they just have not been as consistent as you would like. I mean, you're talking about a team that has only scored 2 first-quarter touchdowns this year. 2. That's just getting off to terrible starts. They did score a touchdown in the first quarter in the game against Philly, and then in the second quarter, they had -6 yards of offense. They were 0 of 8 on third down against Philadelphia. That's the first time in 5 years they didn't convert a third down. Now, a caveat to that, they did go 3 of 3 on fourth down. But still, you're trying to convert on those third downs. You go 0 for 8. That's not very efficient. They just have not quite gotten it in gear thus far offensively. Now, the question is, are the Saints game enough, man enough to step up and stop them? You're talking about a team that scored 20 on Philly. They scored 15 on the Dolphins. They scored 26 on Seattle, 20 on the Raiders, 19 on the Packers, 18 on the Bears, 10 on the Cardinals. And this is not a team that's consistently scored 28, 30 points. And the Saints have been susceptible to some of that previous to this last 2 weeks. And I do feel like while you have maybe made some improvement and gotten a little healthier over the last 2 weeks, it certainly helps when you play some of the lesser teams in the NFL. And Cleveland offensively qualifies as one of the lesser teams in the NFL, certainly, with Jameis Winston playing quarterback. And, Atlanta is pretty good, but and you held them to 17 points, so maybe that's a step in the right direction. It's a question that will be answered coming up on Sunday. I still think Matt Stafford's got enough in the tank to make plays. I think Cooper Kupp's probably lost a step, but you're talking about 2 young corners that you're trying to cultivate. That's a tough challenge for them. So is certainly Puka Nacua on the other side. And then run defense, which has been vital to this Saints team. When they've played well, they've stopped the run. When they have struggled, they've gotten gashed. We saw Carolina establish the ground game on them. We saw the Chargers establish the ground game on them. We saw the Broncos run all over the place. They were just running wild in that game. Tampa scored 51 points. And I'm trying to parse together how much of the Saints' struggles over that 7-game losing streak was talent, how much was execution, how much was a culture disaster. And there's really no way to know until we get more sample size on the other side. It made all the sense in the world the Saints went out there and played well against Atlanta, and it made, because that bump and the renewed sense of life and the cloud being lifted up with the firing of Dennis Allen, it made a lot of sense that they would do that, and it makes a lot of sense to beat the Browns, quite frankly. It just does. But can you sustain it? And I think the Rams are a good test, because if Detroit was coming into the Dome, well, I think we all know how that would go. if Mahomes was coming to the Dome or you were going to Kansas City, I don't feel like you would maybe necessarily learn a lot about this Saints team because they're just not going to win those games. But the Rams are essentially similar to the Saints in terms of talent and in terms of what they've done to this point in the year. They've gotten dusted a couple times against some of the better teams in the league. They've showed up and had some nice performances. They've got a veteran quarterback. Kamara and Kupp probably similar in terms of where they are in their careers. And so if the Saints can go out there and beat this Rams team, I think that would show me that there was something broken late in that Dennis Allen tenure in addition to the injuries. If the Rams come in here and win a 38-17 game, I'll go, well, you got the coach bump and the Browns stink. You're coming off a bye. You're as healthy as you've been in a long time, and you're playing a team that's essentially on level footing with you, and it's in your building. This will tell me a lot about where this Saints team is and what Darren Rizzi is doing. I'm personally not sitting here right now and banging the table for Darren Rizzi to become the next coach of the Saints. I'm not. I think the Saints need to clean house and rip this thing to the studs. I've been steadfast in that. But I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to watch. And this would be a good start to that. I'm not going to learn a lot from playing the Giants because they are a dumpster fire, and that's next. But you talk about Rams, Commanders who are struggling right now, at the Packers who are very good, Raiders. If you can get something going in that stretch of season, I'll listen. I'll listen. Right now, I'm in wait-and-see mode. I can explain the Falcons game. I can explain the Browns game. It becomes more difficult to do that if they beat the Rams. I'm not talking about the playoffs. I'm not talking about the division. I'm just talking about these 60 minutes that we're going to watch on Sunday. And if the Saints can show up and play a solid football game against a team they're level with, I think that there's reason to start thinking about Darren Rizzi as a guy that's really changed some things in there. And it's more than just the injuries. There's been a renewed sense of belief. And you could point to Las Vegas with the Raiders and say, well, they kind of succumbed to that and they're not very good this year. And that's fair. It's a hard league. But I'm not at that inflection point just yet. Maybe I get there coming up on Sunday. The Rams are a favorite, a slight favorite in the Superdome. We'll give a pick for that game coming up a little bit later on this show. Our Saints coverage, always on YouTube. You can find it Hunt on Saints on YouTube. Again, that's Hunt on Saints. All our Saints coverage is right there, cut up into little 8, 10, 12-minute segments so you don't have to scroll through the entire show to find some Saints content. You can just do it right there at the touch of a button on our YouTube channel, Hunt on Saints. Subscribe to that if you would. We'd certainly appreciate that. When we come back, we're going to chat with our guy, J.D. Piquel, host of The Hard Count. Speaking of YouTube, he's there each and every day with his college football content. New college football playoff rankings are out, plus a thought on some of the SEC games coming up this weekend on Rivalry Weekend in college football. Don't go anywhere. It's The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. EvolvePT.com is that website. Robbie Bolton and his team, fantastic over there at Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. They're all about getting active people back to their active lifestyles. And if you're an active person who can't work out because of pain, who is recovering from a surgery and is trying to get back to where you were previously, no matter if it's a youth athlete or someone in their 60s or 70s, if you're active and want to be active but can't because of pain or trying to rehabilitate, Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports is where you need to be. It's state-of-the-art. It's first class. Everything they do is hands-on, from the isokinetic testing that measures your return to strength, from the cupping, dry needling, scraping. They can do all that kind of stuff right there at their facility. It's on Starring near Highland Road. Again, no matter your age, if you're an active person trying to get back to your active lifestyle, Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports is where you need to be. It's Robbie Bolton and his team at Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. Check them out online, EvolvePT.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, hosted by the Goo Goo Dolls' #1 fan, Hunt Palmer.
update from down at the Bahamas. Number 7, LSU 59. Number 20, NC State 46. Anissa Morrow, 16 points and 11 rebounds for Kim Mulkey's Tigers. There are 46 seconds to play in the third quarter. LSU with a 13-point lead. That's now been struck to 10. Three-point jumper there by NC State. So Tigers going to go to the fourth quarter with a lead. It'd be a nice ranked win for the Tigers, who are 7-0 to this point. Let's talk some football. JD Piquel, host of the Hard Count on 3 Sports, with us every single Wednesday and joins us now on the eve of Thanksgiving. Happy Turkey Day. How are you, sir?
Dude, I'm doing phenomenal. I appreciate you being so flexible. I hit you up, I think, at like 11 our time, maybe even later than that, and you're just like, hey, no problem. Let's get you in there, system guy, quarterback. I mean, running the offense, so I appreciate you.
I had a different shuffle after you had requested that. We just make things work here. We're basically, as I told my production staff, like we are basically jamming 3 shows into one here because we're off tomorrow and Friday. So there's plenty of content to get to. We just got to find out what order we're going to get to it. And we'll talk some football now, if that's okay with you.
That sounds phenomenal with me, brother. I mean, we only got so much time left here, man. We got one more regular season week. It hurts a little bit.
That's it. Man, what happened in Norman, Oklahoma over the weekend?
Sure. I mean, if you didn't realize that Nick Saban was gone after the Vanderbilt loss, I mean, it was reaffirmed, reemphasized in that game in Norman. The thing that I think just is so troubling about Alabama, and a reason why I picked Bama to beat Auburn this weekend, but I feel horrific about it, Jalen Milroe, if he's not working on the ground, that Alabama offense is a failure to launch situation. Like, I mean, you look at the 3 lowest rushing totals of the 4 rushing totals that are lowest on the year for Jalen Milroe. 3 of them have came in losses, and it's like 7 yards, 10 yards, 11 yards. So the bottom line here is, if you stop Jalen Milroe's legs, that Ferrari of an offense we saw against Georgia, we saw against LSU, like it has zero ability to do anything. So I'm very curious to see what Milroe does here in the not-distant future as it pertains to the NFL. I believe he still has another year of eligibility with the whole COVID situation. I think he might be the last of that. But, yeah, that was a very, very bad vibes in Tuscaloosa, and it makes sense why.
Do you think this was Ole Miss's best shot, or do you think that they'll have an opportunity to return to this talent level in the coming years as spending that money in the collective?
I guess my question is, are you down to take another swing at this thing?
Yeah. Because
I don't know how much money was invested. I would have to imagine it was more than ever before in the young NIL era for Ole Miss. If I am shelling out, let's say, optimistically $1 million to go get us a national title or to go make the college football playoff, and to finish with, let's go ahead and assume they beat, Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, and we finished 9-3. Like, you're asking me for another $1 million? I'm saying, show me some wins, I'll show you another $1 million. And I mean, I get that, this year had some things that just didn't break your way, and you feel like you probably should have beat, Kentucky. That was a game that you let get away. The Florida game you let get away, and so I'm just like, if I'm giving you more money, I need to see something to know that money is going to be utilized to the nth degree, and I'm not just throwing money at a 9-win football team. So that's a roundabout way to say it's definitely their best shot. I just wonder how resilient that group is out there in Oxford when it comes to writing checks.
It's an interesting thing because most of the time when wealthy people are asked to invest their money, there's a financial return that comes back, theoretically. It doesn't always work. That's the point of investing. But, there's financial benefits that come back. This is not that. You're just investing in happiness, basically. So, there's nothing that's going to come back. It's just a sunk cost every time you do it. I'm just curious how motivated boosters around the country, not just at Ole Miss, are going to be to do that every single year when the money doesn't come back.
And I think the big thing, too, that you mentioned there, Hunt, is if I am putting a certain amount of investment into something, and I am probably pretty wealthy or pretty intelligent if I'm pretty wealthy, I am handing that money over to somebody else to do a job. And at some point in time, if that job doesn't get done, I start feeling like, well, how can I put my hand even further into this cookie jar to get the result that I want? Do I start going off on my own and saying, hey, we're going to go land X, Y, and Z recruit, X, Y, and Z guy out of the portal, and then you have guys committing to schools that are just, in the worst case scenario, you would imagine there's not alignment with the staff and things get really weird. The thing that is curious to me about the whole NIL era, and we're seeing it right now with Michigan. Michigan very clearly had alignment. They had an apparatus between the staff and the resources to get it all worked out where they landed Bryce Underwood. I don't know that activation of funds just automatically will translate to results if you throw enough money at it. You still have to have intelligent people doing intelligent football things during the off season, on game day, behind closed doors. And so I think the players is a non-negotiable part of it, but having the staff to make it all go as well is, I think, something that might be the next evolution of seeing big bags being dropped.
Let's talk another big picture issue before we get to the games this weekend. I'm looking at the college football playoff rankings, and I would suggest that Texas and Notre Dame and SMU and Indiana are in this top 10 right now based more so on schedule strength than the strength of their roster. Is that a problem in college football?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And the thing that I tweeted out actually last night post rankings, and just my mentions turned into a war zone. If I'm the SEC and I'm South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama, and you're telling me by nature of these rankings that we are a better football team than Arizona State, but Arizona State gets an auto bid in the college football playoff, and, if you were to put South Carolina on a field with SMU tomorrow, I have to believe South Carolina is favored. Not the way that the whole thing works. I get that, but, if that's what we believe to be true, at what point in time does the SEC just say, and I get Texas in that equation you mentioned just now, but at what point in time does the SEC just say, forget this, we're just going to go make our own playoff with the Big Ten? We're the drivers of the revenue, we're the drivers of the interest in the sport for, most parties involved here. We don't need to have this deal where SMU is getting in ahead of us or Boise State has the auto bid in the first round bye. It's such an imperfect system. That's the first iteration of it. I don't see a world where we keep this playoff format because of the people that are unhappy, that are honestly the most powerful when it comes to those different institutions.
The Big 12 and the G5 having an auto bid is a laughingstock. It makes the sport a farce. It's absurd to have those teams have an auto bid to get in. I don't need everyone getting a seat at the table just because. I think they need to put the best teams in. And this is independent of LSU because LSU is nowhere near this discussion. But certainly South Carolina is a team that would have a legitimate beef if they could beat Clemson, that a team like SMU is going to get in. But that's a bigger picture topic for another day. I do want to talk about some of these games, and we've got about 4 minutes to go here for the top of the hour. So let's start with what I think is going to be the best environment in all of college football for the season in College Station, Texas, coming up on Saturday night. How do you see that one? Texas is a 5.5-point favorite, which surprises me, quite frankly, JD.
I know we got 4 minutes, so I'll go rapid fire here. To me, it's about, can Texas call the game in rhythm with Quinn Ewers? We've seen Quinn Ewers look great at times. Haven't seen that really in quite a few weeks. If he can dial it up, he being Steve Sarkisian in relation to getting Quinn Ewers going, I don't like Texas A&M to do what they did the week before and catch a team that's ahead of them by 21 points. So I'll take Texas. One more thought here. I think Arch Manning has a role in this game, Hunt. I really do. I don't think it's a split reps, get him time. I think it's have a change of pace. It's wrinkle season. Get Arch Manning involved in the run game. Get a little quarterback design run stuff for him and have him throw A&M off guard, much like South Carolina had success doing with Lenore Sellers.
Clemson and South Carolina. Really interesting one there at Clemson. Does South Carolina have a chance to go in there and beat their in-state rivals?
Am I the only one who thinks that the wrong team's favored there? I mean, Clemson minus 2.5. I don't know how they're blocking Dylan Stewart. Don't think they're stopping Lenore Sellers. I would take South Carolina to just absolutely mollywop the good folks out there in Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina.
Man, that's something. Juice Wells leaves and tells Shane Beamer it's because y'all don't have a quarterback, and they might end up into the playoffs somehow, and Ole Miss might be at home. Let's talk about the Iron Bowl. Interesting one now after last week's developments. Auburn's starting to move the ball a little bit, and Alabama looked a mess in Norman. What do you think about that one in T-Town?
Looking at Auburn against running quarterbacks, we spoke about Milroe. If he gets rolling on the ground, it's game, set, match. Taylon Green had 80 yards on the ground against them. Michael Hawkins Jr. from Oklahoma had around 70 yards. So if Jalen Milroe is in that neighborhood and he has the explosive runs, it's not like a 20 carry, 65 yards kind of day. If it's like 10 carries, 70 yards, I think that ends up kind of being the domino effect where everything else opens up. I'll take Alabama to bounce back. I don't think Auburn's able to play as clean as they did the week before. I don't know if I see that happening 2 weeks in a row, so I'll take Bama.
Plenty of time. We got 2 minutes here. I'll get you to LSU and Oklahoma. It's a new iteration of the SEC rivalry into the season inside Tiger Stadium. I'm excited to see Oklahoma come out of that tunnel. I've been watching Florida and Alabama and Tennessee and Ole Miss for years. It's just a little bit of a different flavor. What do you think about the matchup?
I'll take an agitated LSU and a potentially let-down spot for Oklahoma. I really love Brent Venables. I'm not even so sure Jackson Arnold isn't still a guy, but I think the pass rush of LSU overwhelms him. And I think the Tigers finished on a high note, and Oklahoma finishes at 6-6.
Have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the long weekend of football, JD. We'll talk again next week.
Go Tigers.
JD Piquel, host of The Hard Count. If you're looking for your college football content, you can find it on YouTube from him. He's with the On3 team, and he does a fantastic job, always good enough to spend a little bit of time with us here. I concur with a couple of his picks. I disagreed with a couple of them as well. So we'll get into all of that in hour number 2. I've got my SEC picks against the spread coming up on the other side of SportsCenter. Matthew Bruni's going to join us probably at 2:15, maybe 2:30. We're just monitoring the LSU women's basketball game down there in the Bahamas. He's going to join us once that goes final. So I had that score. They've started in the fourth quarter now. LSU does have a lead in that game. It is 63-53, a 10-point lead with 7 minutes to go. So stands to reason. Probably going to be closer to 2:30 with Bruni. So we'll get some SEC picks against the spread. We will do some Saints talk. We'll talk about LSU and Oklahoma as well. And we'll get our final picks coming up at the end of the show. If you missed any of the first hour of today's show and you want to check it out while you're commuting, wherever it is that you may be going for this Thanksgiving holiday, you can do it wherever you find your podcast. Hunt Palmer Show. You can search that on Apple's podcast, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound. You can find us certainly on YouTube as well. And do want to remind you, our basketball segments all season long are going to be put at the Hoops with Hunt podcast. The old one that we had forever, I think it goes back to 2018 when I started doing Hoops with Hunt. If you listened then, you can pick right back up. It's the same feed, and it's all our basketball segments from the show archived there each and every day, so you can certainly check that out. We opened the show talking about LSU and Oklahoma, specifically points off turnovers and how big a deal that's been for Oklahoma this year. My SEC football power rankings are at 115. A little Saints-Rams talk at 130. Find all of that on demand. We're going to step aside for SportsCenter, a quick timeout. When we come back on the other side of SportsCenter, my picks against the spread. We have got to have a big week. It's the last week to get things in gear and finish over 500. If I can do that, we'll feel good about things. So come back on the other side of SportsCenter. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot at Genesis of Baton Rouge is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. A lot of folks love to put a big Christmas bow on a new ride. If you want to do that this year, head over to Genesis of Baton Rouge. It's on Airline near Pico. It's a fantastic experience to go by, work with their brand ambassadors, and get behind the wheel of a Genesis. If you've never done it, give it a shot. Just put it on your list. It's a luxury vehicle at a reasonable price. That's the model over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every single new Genesis at Genesis of Baton Rouge comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. 10 years, 100,000 miles, plus 3 years of complimentary maintenance. 3 years of complimentary maintenance. That's just part of the experience of being a Genesis driver. Every single vehicle on the line, top safety pick. Check them out online, genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.